The Light in the Darkness. Chapter 1, The House on Black Hollow Road. The road to Ravensbrook wound through dense forests, the autumn canopy casting flickering shadows over Pastor David Carter's car. The engine hummed steadily as he navigated the final stretch toward their new home. Beside him, Sarah, his wife, stretched and sighed, shifting in her seat as the tension of the long drive melted away. "It's beautiful here," she murmured, peering through the window at the rolling hills bathed in golden light. David nodded but said nothing. He was too focused on the road, on the weight of what lay ahead. A new town. A new congregation. A fresh start. Behind them, their 10-year-old daughter, Lily, sat with her stuffed lamb, whispering to it as she often did. She had been uncharacteristically quiet for most of the trip, staring at the trees as if she were waiting for something. The sign loomed ahead. "Welcome to Ravensbrook, a community of faith." David exhaled. This was their second chance. After the struggles they had faced in the city, the conflicts, the pressures, the doubts, this quiet town felt like divine intervention. A place to rebuild, to refocus, to shepherd a flock without the noise of urban life drowning out the voice of God. As they passed through the heart of the town, David took in the charming storefronts, the white steepled church at its center, and the people who walked at an unhurried pace, nodding in friendly acknowledgement. A bakery sat at the corner, the scent of fresh bread drifting through the open door. Children played near the general store, their laughter carried on the crisp October breeze. But something changed as they drove deeper. The warmth of the town square faded, replaced by a quieter, heavier presence. At the far end of Black Hollow Road, a house emerged from behind the trees. A Victorian-era structure, once grand, now stood in eerie isolation. Its towering frame loomed against the dusk sky, its windows shattered like empty eye sockets. The paint, once vibrant, had peeled away in long, curling strips, revealing the gray wood beneath. The front gate was rusted, hanging on a single hinge, while weeds choked the pathway leading to the front steps. Lily's fingers tightened around her stuffed lamb. "Daddy," she whispered, "I don't like that house." David glanced at her in the rearview mirror. "It's just an old house, sweetheart." Sarah frowned. "Why hasn't anyone torn it down?" As if in response, an elderly man sitting outside a gas station turned his head sharply toward them. His gaze locked onto their car, his expression unreadable, but his eyes were filled with something dark. A warning. David forced a chuckle, shaking off the unease. Small towns always had their legends, their haunted places. It was nothing more than superstition. Or so he thought. The parsonage was a modest but comfortable white house next to St. Mark's Chapel. The congregation welcomed them with open arms that evening, bringing homemade casseroles and warm bread. They introduced themselves one by one: Margaret, an elderly woman with sharp eyes; Tom, a longtime deacon; Jeremy, a younger man eager to prove himself. At first, the conversation was pleasant, full of well wishes and stories about the town's traditions. But when David, curious, mentioned the house on Black Hollow Road, the atmosphere shifted. Margaret pursed her lips. "Best to stay away from that place, Pastor." David hesitated. "Why?" Tom set down his fork. "Because it doesn't belong to this town anymore. It belongs to something else." A nervous chuckle escaped Jeremy. "Oh, come on. It's just an abandoned house." Margaret's sharp gaze silenced him. "Then explain the lights." David frowned. "Lights?" Tom nodded gravely. "That house has been empty for decades, yet people see lights flickering inside. Some say they hear voices." Sarah leaned in. "Hasn't anyone tried to fix it?" Margaret sighed. "A few did. None stayed long." Tom lowered his voice. "A man lived there long ago. He was troubled. Dabbled in things he shouldn't have. He invited something into that house, and whatever it was, it never left." David felt a chill creep up his spine. "Has anyone tried to cleanse it? A blessing, an exorcism?" Tom's face darkened. "Many have. Pastors, priests. Even folks who deal in other ways. But whatever's inside doesn't want to leave." The room fell into uneasy silence. David swallowed. He had heard ghost stories before. He had counseled people gripped by fear of the unknown. But this was different. There was something in the air, an unspoken truth shared among them. And for the first time that day, doubt crept into his mind. Later that night, after Lily had gone to bed, David stood by their bedroom window. His eyes drifted toward Black Hollow Road, where the house loomed against the darkness. Just an old building, he told himself. Nothing more. But then, movement. A flicker of light. His breath caught. A warm, golden glow illuminated one of the upper windows. It pulsed for a moment before vanishing. David's pulse quickened. He knew what he had seen. The house was abandoned. Wasn't it?